In this presentation on smart college planning. My name is Dale Johnsen in Westlake Village, and I know that your time is valuable, so I'm going to pack this video with a ton of valuable information in a very short time. Bottom line, I've got two goals: to work with students to get them into their dream college, and two, to work with parents to find the very best way to pay for that dream college. So to get started, let's watch a short video clip that sets the stage.
Oh God, no, I don't want to click it. I'm not going to click it. Why don't you click it?
If they say no to you, I say we say no to them. If they don't want my baby, they're stupid.
I got
it! When I became a dad, I made a choice to support my daughter's dreams.
You don't have enough money.
It says right here we have $401,000.
Jackpot.
You missed it.
That says you have a 401k account. Alex thinks we can afford tuition and we can't.
We gotta lie. That's what parents do. Because otherwise the kids are gonna realize that we don't know what we're doing. Well.
Oh God.
Well, after that little video clip, maybe you'd like to take advantage of a free hour consultation with me, either face-to-face in my office in Westlake or on zoom.com. So we can talk about that later on. Basically, my two objectives in this presentation are to scare you with some facts about the huge tsunami that's coming your way. And then two, to give you some hope by throwing you a life preserver. What I'm really offering you is some professional guidance on how to secure the degree that your child needs without getting ripped off by the college system. Now, in this presentation, I've got to cover a lot of material, so the presentation itself is pretty generic. But that's why I'm offering the 1 hour free consultation to answer any particular questions you have about your family. So please jot down some questions as we go through these slides. Let me give you a thumbnail sketch of why I'm personally passionate about helping parents like you with late stage smart college planning. I've always been a lifelong learner and information junkie. I earned a bachelor's, master's, and doctoral degree, continually searching for the real truth lurking behind all the noise out there. And I'm an optimist with an intense work ethic who places a high value on honesty, which means I could never sell somebody on something that wasn't truly best for them. Now, when it comes to college planning, my goal is to help both students and parents to make wise decisions at this very crucial pivot point that's going to set the trajectory for the rest of those students' lives. I've got two wonderful adult children in their 30s, both married, graduated with bachelor's degrees from California State University, Northridge. One went on to graduate school, and they've given me 7 grandkids, currently ages 2 through 10. And it's important to me that I be able to help each of them get into the ideal college of their choice at the lowest possible cost. One of them, Eddie, who's 9, is incessantly saying, "Papa, I have a question." And then we, delve into really deep concepts. The other night I was putting him to bed, helping his mom out, and after more than a dozen such questions back to back, he looked at me and said, "Papa, I like talking to you." I gave him a big hug and said, "Eddie, talking with you is my most favorite thing in the whole world." It's what I live for. So what drives me is that I want to be able to feel the joy of helping each of my grandkids succeed with a sense of purpose and fulfillment, excelling in what they were wired to do. And I want that same joy for you. I want each of you to enjoy a close, loving relationship with your kids after they're grown and gone, like I do. I want you to be able to avoid that psychic pain of anguishing debt and disillusionment that usually graduates and parents still suffer on for decades if they stumble through this pivotal process without a guide. When I look back at all the mistakes I've made 15 to 20 years ago and how much money I could have saved if I only knew then what I know now, well, that's what inspires me to do this. Now, I want you to relax for a second because I am not a standard financial advisor. I once was licensed with my Series 6, 63, and 65, but I gave that up. And so please know I am not that guy who's hoping to get assets under management so I can earn 1% on your money each year for the rest of my life. That's not my gig. No, my vision is to help your child get into their ideal college at the lowest cost in order to keep more money in your accounts so that you can have a better retirement. Now, when it comes to this whole subject, perspective is everything. You look at this picture here and it feels impossible. How could this be a real picture, which it is, of a rock seemingly floating in the air? But you flip it around and you understand what's really going on. So what I want to do in this presentation is to give you an insider's guide on how you can receive as much free money as possible to cover the costs of a college education. You see, parents need these kind of insider tips because this whole college process is like a giant game of Monopoly. You're playing against professionals who know all the rules. And so I want to show you some of those rules so that you'll be able to win at this game. Now, a recurring theme you're going to hear over and over in this presentation is never overpay for college. To achieve that goal, there's a complex process that needs to be navigated carefully. I mean, have you ever filled out a FAFSA form before? There's literally over 100 items of information required on it. How about a CSS profile? There's hundreds more of the most financially intrusive questions you'll ever see. And if you're doing this late at night by yourself with a couple glasses of wine, it's easy to make mistakes that can cost you dearly. Plus, each school that your student applies to has its own deadlines, in addition to the general application deadline, an essay deadline, a financial aid deadline. And so it's a monumental challenge to keep up with all this and still have a life. Maybe you've got kids applying to more than one school. Do you even know all the schools your child is interested in? Do you know which schools would be the best fit for their major, their career goals, for their personality? Do you have any idea how you're going to pay for all that? Well, you see, the dirty little secret among colleges and universities is that they are purposely being deceitful in withholding key information from us because they really want you to overpay for their school. And that's no joke. They want you to be able to pay as much money out as possible so they can hold on to more of their money for the next students that come along. So what exactly is the cost of attendance? It's not just tuition, room, and board. There are fees, book costs, new computer, phone, living expenses. It's basically everything but pizza and beer money. Community colleges have a low cost of attendance. Their cost per credit hour is at a good price, and there's no room and board to deal with when you're living at home or have an apartment. But then you have your state schools that cost more, and then you have your out-of-state schools, and then you have your private colleges, and then you have your Ivy League universities. And so the cost of attendance varies. We could have a cost of attendance at a local community college at maybe $3,000 a year, all the way up to an Ivy League school at $75,000 a year, such as Pepperdine or USC. And that cost is not slowing down a bit. It's really increasing about 7 to 8% per year without any signs of backing off. Well, why do we do it? Why do we send our kids to college? It's plain economics. We want them to be able to succeed financially in a world of supply and demand. Most employers don't even look at applicants unless they have a college degree. And there are now more undergraduates enrolled in higher education programs than ever before in our history. There's also less government funding, less state support per student than ever before. Some colleges, like UC San Diego, receive 36,000 applications to fill 1,000 seats. Their incoming freshmen have an average SAT score of 1970 and an average GPA of 4.13. Talk about being competitive. And their cost of attendance, by the way, is $31,000 a year. Now, most parents typically multiply whatever that cost of attendance is by 4 to estimate the total cost of college. But do you know the real national average for somebody to finish a bachelor's degree? It's 5.8 years. So instead of 120,000, 30 times 4, it's more like 180,000. And then multiply that by the number of children in your family. That's when it gets scary enough, because it can ruin your mortgage equity and ruin your 401k plans. Now, when you boil it all down, there's really 5 ways to pay for college. There's savings, loans, scholarships. You could go to a cheaper school, or you could skip college altogether. And I don't actually want to advise. So let's look at these 5 options. 1, you can pay cash for college. Now, some people are wealthy enough to pull out a checkbook and write out a check for $200,000 to cover a school like Pepperdine or USC and just be done with it. Does that sound good to you? Are you excited about doing that? No, most of us need quite a bit of help. So how does the process work? Well, in the Department of Education, there is an asset protection allowance that basically says, if you have a lot of money to your name in CDs and rental properties, cash, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, vacation home, all that stuff, they're going to withhold financial aid that otherwise they would have offered to your child, basically penalizing those who've been responsible to save ahead of time. So they're playing a game, and we want you to know the game rules of engagement. So you know how this whole system works, so you don't get robbed by the system. Well, now let's look at option number 2. 90% of families that we work with use loans in some form or another, either because they have to or because they want to. You see, one strategy we might suggest gives a tax deduction for your college payments, while the other method doesn't. And when it comes to a loan, would you prefer a fixed monthly payment, or a loan that maybe starts with a low teaser rate and then goes variable and gets higher later on? I think we'd all want a fixed rate, wouldn't we? Well, what if you could have a loan, same as cash, for 48 months before any payments begin? I think that's a pretty good deal. So we could work with these types of situations and try to get those loans as low as possible, because not only does the high cost of college hurt your retirement, it can also hurt your child's chances to launch as an independent adult. I mean, why are so many 27-year-olds still living at home? It's that dreaded student loan debt. They can't even afford rent. Just a few weeks ago on the news, it said that of the $4 trillion debt held in the United States, the largest part of that pie is $1.6 trillion of student loan debt. That's more than all the credit card debt combined. 45 million Americans are currently carrying student loan debt. And so if you have a graduate with 30,000 in debt, they're carrying maybe a payment of $400 a month for many, many years. Now, of course, not all debt is the same. And so we can show how not only to reduce the size of your loans, how to get no interest loans, but also how to set up the simplest and lowest payment plan where you can make your payments to be tax deferred. Now, what about scholarships? Well, of the $245 billion or more available in student aid, what percent of it do you think comes by way of scholarships? The answer is only 2 to 3%. Now, since all of us have limited time and energy, wouldn't you think it makes more sense to chase after the 97%, even more than the 3%? Now, a scholarship is when a private institution, a corporation, charity, church, foundation, or an individual gives away money for college that they don't want back. That's a scholarship. Now, that's very different from a grant. There's 2 types of grants. There's a merit-based grant that's based on things like your GPA, SAT score, whether you're an Eagle Scout, whether you're an athlete. And then there are need-based grants that help those who have lower income. But when it comes to true scholarships, they're pretty rare and don't really pay out that much. Now, options 4 and 5, we don't really recommend. So we hope we can avoid those altogether. Now let's take a look at a few common myths about how this process works. Some people think that they simply make too much money to qualify for any financial aid at all. They listen to somebody at the water cooler or at the soccer game and they get discouraged and say, well, I won't even file for it. The truth is, it doesn't really matter how much money you make. You can make $1 million a year and still get financial aid. You see, not all financial aid is a grant. Some is simply low-cost loans that you could get from the state government or the federal government, and there's various ways to do that. Some other people may think my child isn't smart enough to get any aid. It's okay if they're not a super student. They can increase their chances of getting lots of aid if they take their SAT or ACT test seriously enough. That can be worth several thousands of dollars of additional financial aid, and it can be the difference as to whether they get accepted or not in a particular university. Doing a good job on their essay, having a resume, showing some community service and activity, all those things are important as well. Now, some people say, well, I can't get aid because I own a home. Well, there's a partial truth to that. If you have an expensive home with lots of equity and you're applying to a private elite school, that could count against you. In a public school, they're not going to count it. But in a private college, you know the golden rule? They've got the gold, so they make the rules. And private schools are not subject to governmental rules. For the private elite schools, they require the CSS profile, and they do ask how much home equity you have. But the key is you have to know what your numbers are going to look like before you even send in the forms. Otherwise, you can be on the losing end of the deal. A fourth myth, this is easy, this is quick, this is simple. And that isn't true at all. Doing the FAFSA form, a CSS form, are not easy. They can be very complicated, and professional help really is worth getting that done right. A fifth myth is that the admissions officer or financial aid officer at the college will help you out. Really? No, the fact is, each school really wants to be able to charge you as much as they possibly can. Now, keep in mind that the recruiter, the college admissions person, is very different from the college financial aid officer, who is more like the controller. And who does that controller work for? The chancellor. They want the school to be able to retain as much as of their money as they possibly can and get as much from you as you're willing to pay. So there's a lot of factors to play in this whole situation. Now, this particular pie chart represents the $245 billion available in the US every year. The blue section at the top represents what parents, on average, will pay out of pocket. It's about 23% of the whole. That red slice, that's the scholarships. The green represents all the other forms of financial aid, which we call other people's money. And our goal is to maximize this green slice in order to minimize the blue slice for you. So how do we get as much aid as possible? That's the crucial question. Write down this formula: COA minus EFC equals FN. Now, we've already talked about different costs of attendance. Each school may cost differently. A community college might be $13,000 a year. University of California might be $25,000, $26,000. Pepperdine might be $54,000. Stanford is around $70,000. That's the cost of attendance. But what is the EFC? What's the expected family contribution? what are you expected to pay? Well, that's based on a formula, an algorithm, and it takes into account your ages as parents, the household income that you have, the assets that you have, the ages of your students, how many students are in college at the same time, how many family members live in that household, what's the student's income, what assets are in the student's name. All of those factors play into what your out-of-pocket cost is going to be. Now, we work with 3 different categories of family. The first category is one that really is going to have a full financial need because they don't have high income. The key here is that the student be able to get into the universities that they're applying for by having high scores. But when they do get in, they'll be able to receive maximum financial aid dollars. It's still important that they submit all of these forms accurately and on time, because if they don't, they're going to be in trouble. So, for example, if the admissions office has 2 stacks of applications, one that are filled in accurately and on time, and the other that have come in late with mistakes, which one do you think they're going to work on first? Yeah, exactly. And so those are the ones that are going to get most of the money. And by the time they send back the form to you, you correct it, fill it out, send it back, 6 or 8 weeks have passed, and most of the money's already been given out. So it's so important that these forms be done accurately and on time. The second category of families we work with, and this is whether you're looking at state schools, private schools, or Ivy League schools, the difference between getting maximum financial aid and 0 financial aid dollars has to do with how have you positioned your income and assets so that you'll get the maximum amount of aid. Now, this category is the majority of people that we work with. They don't yet know what these numbers are going to look like before they send in their applications, before they do their financial aid forms, before they get up the hopes and dreams of their children of going to a certain school. And so what we do is we help these parents find these numbers ahead of time so they can be realistic and make wise choices based upon where they're going to land. And also help them to find a way sometimes to move assets so that they become invisible to the financial aid forms. And then there are category 3 families, those who have great income, have good assets, money's not really a problem. They probably could write a check to pay for the college, but they still have to submit all the forms accurately and on time. And of course, they want to get as much merit-based money as possible. They want to know how to lessen their burden. So these families, we can often save them $5, $10, $15, even $30,000 a year. And it's all legal and ethical. And it's almost as good as getting a scholarship or a grant. And so if you're one of these higher income families and money's not a problem, and you're not going to qualify for need-based aid, we can still help you save a lot of money on your income taxes. And we'd be happy to help you out with that. So what's the real total cost of paying for a college education? Well, let's say that a state school is going to cost you about $20,000 a year, and it takes 4 years to finish. So public school, $80,000. Now, if you are in a 25% tax bracket, you're going to have to earn $106,000 to pay Uncle Sam his share before you can pay that $80,000 to the university. So when we look at higher tax brackets, we've got to realize that we need 25 to 37% more than the cost of attendance in order to pay for that college. And with the cost of an elite school being maybe as high as $300,000, wouldn't you want to find a way to pay for that college on a pre-tax basis? Wouldn't that be worth looking into? Okay, so let's look at an example. Northwestern University is a major university in Chicago. It costs about $45,000 a year to go there. Now, let's say we have a family who, after their FAFSA forms are filled out, they have an expected family contribution of $78.78. So for their EFC, the school says they should be able to pay $7,800 a year. And when we subtract that from the $4,500, we're left with $37,000 in need. Okay, does that make sense? Now, Northwestern has a history of meeting 100% of the need. So the family's total cost to go to this college is the $78.78. Now, in comparison, Cal State Northridge, CSUN, is listed at only $16,500 a year, a whole lot less money, right? And when you subtract that $78.78 from $16,500, you end up with $8,689 of financial need. But CSUN only offers 55% of that need, which means we fall $3,900 short. Well, who's picking up the shortfall? It gets added back into the expected family contribution for mom and dad to pay. $2,000 of that has to be earned through a work-study program. So the key takeaway is it would cost $14,000 to go to CSUN per year versus less than $8,000 to go to Northwestern, about half the cost. Isn't that eye-opening? Actually, it costs less to go to the more expensive school than to attend the cheaper state school. Don't you want to know how all this works out before you walk through the process? So let's do another example. We all know about Stanford in the Silicon Valley. It costs about $69,500 a year to go there. It's an awesome school. Well, let's take the same family whose expected family contribution is $78.78. When we subtract that from the 69.5, it leaves $61,700 of need. That's a lot, right? If you ever told your child, we can't even look at Stanford because it costs too much? Well, we might change that story after seeing this, because Stanford, like Northwestern and like Harvard, has a history of meeting 100% of the need for any family earning less than $125,000 a year. And it's all free money. It's a grant. None of it comes by way of a loan. None of it's a work-study program. So this family's out-of-pocket cost would be only $78.78 to attend Stanford. Only 11% of the total cost of attendance is paid by the parents. Now, in comparison, let's take a look at San Francisco State University, where the cost of attendance is about $26,700 a year. You subtract the $7,800 from that, you come up with $18,842 of need. Now, San Francisco State meets about 73% of that need, typically, which means we are still $13,300 short. Who's picking up that shortfall? You. Now, some of this has to be earned through a work-study program, but the key is it costs about $15,000 to go to SF State and less than $8,000 to go to Stanford. Now, if your child wants a degree in a particular major and has relatives you can live with in the Bay Area, maybe SF State is actually a better choice. I don't know. But if you want to have a better career opportunity after graduation, I'd probably go with Stanford and save that extra several thousand a year, wouldn't you? It's important to know what it's going to cost you before you even apply to these schools. And so that's why we help families with this all the time. But what happens if you don't get an offer of 100% aid? Well, most of the time you won't. In fact, most of the time, schools that you apply to will give you a lowball financial aid offer when the child is accepted. That's when we are needed the most to step in and appeal and negotiate for a better offer. Now, I've got some example PDFs I'd be happy to mail you. For example, Vanderbilt University awarded an aid package of $32,000 per year to one student, which sounded pretty good. But then in April, just before they had to choose which college they're going to by May 1st, just a week before decision day, the university's looking over their freshman enrollment numbers, all the seats aren't filled, and when they see that appeal letter, they actually added money to the offers. So they ended up offering $55,000 a year. And so now this family only has to pay $9,000, making Vanderbilt cheaper than other state school alternatives. This is called financial aid leveraging, because most private schools and many public schools engage in this practice where they are deliberately offering less financial aid than they're able to, hoping that you'll take it. It's like a game of chicken. And by appealing and negotiating, we depend on them to blink first. In fact, there's some families that we've saved over $200,000 over 4 years. It's perfectly legal, it's ethical to use this strategy to get more money from a college. It's really the same principle as using a CPA to make sure you're getting every allowable deduction on your 1040 form. So when they tease you with a lowball offer and present less than what you could get, they're counting on your desperation to enroll. And so by you knowing this in advance, it presents a huge opportunity for you. Now, going through an appeal process can be kind of messy because especially helps if you've been admitted to a few different schools. So there's a little competition going on. But keep in mind that this is a business decision for these schools. And just like a retailer who's going to give you a discount price at the last minute, they'd rather get you to make the sale than to let you walk out of the door. And so we help you appeal and negotiate, and it works out very, very well. Now, here's one example of a family that took control of their situation. Identical income, identical set of assets and home equity. One family took control by hiring our services and allowing us to do an appeal on their behalf, and they saved nearly $49,000 over 4 years of time. Why? Because they played the game according to the rules, because they had us as their coach to help them through the process. Now, $49,000 over 4 years, where I'm come from, that's pretty good money. And I could make money available for the next child's college education. It could help you pay off the house sooner. It could leave more money in your account for retirement. So I think that's a pretty good deal. Well, what about Section 529 plans? What are their so-called benefits? How do they affect financial aid? Remember, the federal formula for assessing how much money is available to pay for college is strictly focused on the assets of the parent. And so technically, a 529 plan is not a parent asset. It's considered a student asset. So some colleges don't take a look at it, but others who require the CSS profile, they do include the CSS 529 money as an asset, which obviously is going to reduce how much money that student is going to qualify for. And so I'm not telling you to blow up a 529 plan. If you have one, it's still good. It's good that you planned ahead, but it means that you need somebody to help you work through how to best utilize that money, when to spend it, and how to leverage it for the best positive effect. Another fact. Okay, let's take this discussion one step further. And let's see what the cost of college might do for your retirement plans if you could redirect the money towards yourself. I mean, let's say in theory, you got a full ride and didn't have to pay for college at all, okay? And then instead of paying for college for your kids, you took that same amount of money that you would have given towards college and you put it into a vehicle that churns out 6 to 7% of growth per year. And then in 15 or 20 years, you'd have a big pile of money to take out in tax-free retirement funds, right? And then any money you didn't have to use for college for your first child, you could then pull from that pile that you've already accumulated and use it for your second or third child. And then you could pay off any debt, pay off the house, and have still a large amount to retire on. You see, we might want to use other people's money for college and then take the amount that you normally would have been paying each year and put it into a conservative fund that ends up turning into maybe $250,000 in 20 years to build your own retirement. And then you can use that money to pay off the student loans. So this is a real big issue, a massively huge deal. Now, all financial aid for college is going to come from one of four sources, either from the federal government or from the state, which is giving less away every year, from the college itself through scholarships and grants. Now remember, they've got lots of money, they just don't want to spend it. If you've ever been on a college campus lately, they are beautiful, they're well kept. It means they've got a lot of money to spend. They're running a business, the business of education. And their goal is to get you to pay as much out-of-pocket money as possible. And then the fourth source, of course, is private sources, such as private scholarships. Now, we've already talked about the FAFSA and the importance of submitting this document accurately and on time to not lose out on aid that you might actually qualify for. This is actually one of our services, filling this out for you and submitting it ahead of schedule. You see, FAFSA is a real critical thing, but there's one other form called the CSS form, stands for College Scholarship Service, that's used by about 10% of the schools, what we call profile schools. Colleges like Stanford, USC, Ivy League schools. These are governed by the College Board. And they ask on this profile 791 of the most financially intrusive questions you'll ever see in your life. And then they have it verified by the IRS. So all the top schools, the Notre Dames, Dukes, Vanderbilt, Rice, Pepperdine, they've got the CSS form and then their own institutional forms with another 200 questions. Now, let me give you an example of one of the questions on one of these forms. What was the year, model, and make of mom and dad's car? Why would they care what kind of car you drive? If you're driving an S-Class Mercedes, they're trying to figure out how much money they can milk you for. So they're looking at all this stuff. And keep in mind that if you own a business or farm, there's additional forms you have to fill out. And if you're divorced or separated, they're going to ask for all kinds of details about that. Now, remember our old formula of COA minus EFC equals family need. Wouldn't it be great to know in advance what portion of the cost of education is going to be met by the school before you apply? You see, some schools only meet less than 50%. Some don't meet anything. Others will meet 100% of the need. So don't you want to know what those schools are, how generous they're going to be with their money before your child sends in an application? It's all about setting realistic expectations for ourselves as well as for the children before they apply. So you see, the problem with 529 plans is that if you go to an elite profile school, it's going to include that money as assets, which is obviously going to reduce how much money that student's going to qualify for when they submit the forms. So you really need somebody to take a close look at that and make sure that it's not going to hurt you in the financial aid process. Now, there's some other issues that can cause some confusion and complication, and that's some of the laws and amendments that go into play. So it's helpful to have a professional looking at that individual situation to make sure that mistakes are not made. So what can you do to make sure that you do not become a casualty of this confusing system? Well, first of all, really should have started a long time ago on the planning, 17 years ago, right? The day that that kid was born. But there's a proverb that says the best time to plant a tree was many years ago, but the second best time is today. The only time it's too late for college funding and planning services is the senior year of their college education. Even if they're at a community college and they plan to transfer, we can still help with that. Now, we might be too late to get every semester at a lower cost, but if we can get next year's semesters at a lower cost, you might still be able to save some money and save a lot of hassle in the long run. So we hope to be able to work with you. Now, if you choose to hire somebody like myself to work with you in this college admissions process, make sure you ask these specific questions. Can you show me how to lower my expected family contribution and maximize my eligibility for financial aid? Can you help me pick schools that will give me the best aid package and meet most of that need with more free money so that I don't have as many loans? Can you actually fill out the FAFSA and CSS forms for me, line by line, to make sure they're done right? And will you negotiate for me if I get a bad package offer? And can you show me how to pay for college on a tax-favored basis, even if I don't qualify for any financial aid? So those are top questions that every professional college planning service should be able to answer for you. Now, some of you may be thinking, I make too much money, so I'm not going to qualify for any aid. Well, even if that's the case, there's still money that can be left on the table if we don't take the right kind of steps. We can test out various cash flow strategies. We can see what other families in history have done with a similar situation and how we can encourage the college to be more generous in providing aid. So exactly what could a college specialist do for you if you realize this is really too much to do on my own and my accountant really isn't built for this? What can you do? Well, you want to find out exactly what the college planning specialist is going to do. Will they do the income and asset planning? Will they help you pick the best schools that match the major and give the most aid? Will they fill out the forms, negotiate for you, and have a tax-favored payment strategy? Those are all important issues. So the mission that we have for our clients is to eliminate administrative nightmares for you, integrate sound financial planning strategy with the whole financial aid rules and regulations, and then help you implement an admissions and payment strategy so that your student can attend their dream school in the most affordable way possible. And we can't guarantee to get your kid into a school. This is not a scam. But we do guarantee that if you're not satisfied with our services, we're going to refund your fee with whatever you still have coming to you. We're going to stand behind our services to you 100%. And so we're going to come and help provide that income and asset planning assistance, help you pick the right schools, help you fill out the financial forms, help you get the best position to give access to the schools that your child needs, to negotiate better financial aid packages, and to help you figure out how to pay for it in the most tax efficient way possible. I mean, at this point, are you really interested in knowing what your financial aid package from a certain school might look at before your student even applies to that school? And are you interested in knowing if there are strategies that you can take advantage of today to increase the chances of getting that child enrolled at that dream school, as well as making it more easily affordable? Well, that's what we're all about. So I encourage you to make an appointment. I can set up a free consultation with you using Zoom software. So no matter where you are in the country, we can do that. Now, if you're married, we'd like to have both parents on the call. If you could come into the office in Westlake Village, we'd love to do that. So please let me know when you'd be able to make that appointment. And once we have that appointment, either online or in person, one of three things is going to happen. Either you're going to say, thanks very much, I got what I needed, I'm going to go off and do it myself. Or two, you may say, I need help in this area, but I'm going to handle this other part on my own, and that's fine. Or number three, you're going to say, I would like you to take this whole thing off my plate, do the financial planning as well as the college admissions process, and take care of that for me, because I think we'll have better results. Now, when we have this free individual consultation, we're going to go through a program called My Tuition Score. It's a bonus value. If you did it yourself, it'll cost you $79. But when you do it alongside of me, we're going to walk through this together, and it's going to help you see how prepared you are for college. And you're going to see what the actual cost of acceptance, cost of attendance is at various colleges. So here's what we're going to do for your students, for you as parents, and then the bonus of My Tuition Score. It's all going to be taken care of when we meet together, either online or in person. This is my office in Westlake Village, and we can certainly meet via Zoom and take an hour and answer all your questions and go through this My Tuition Score process. So one way or the other, let's develop a plan. And I look forward to working with you soon. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this video.